The other issue I wanted to mention real quick is we have all these new affordable places coming online. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is we have no tracking. Like if you go to a school and they can identify 5 families that are struggling and need an affordable home to improve their living situation. Well, if at the end of the process we make 500 affordable homes and we still have 3 families that are not in an affordable house in our area, well, what happened? You know,
Welcome to Local Living Tri-City, your go-to podcast for exploring the vibrant communities of Temecula, Murrieta, and Menifee. Join me, Liz Jones, as we dive into real estate insights and local business stories, bringing you closer to the heart of our Tri-City area. Let's get started with today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Local Living. I have with me our Senator Kelly Seyarto for the 32nd District. Welcome, Kelly.
well, hi, thank you for having me today.
Oh, you bet. You bet. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you've got lots of legislation going on right now. And in fact, for our audience, I think we're going to hit some really hot topics today, our housing crisis, what legislation is doing. But I wanted to take one quick second to read a little bit of the bios of those, and our audience can understand who you are and how you bring so much knowledge to the table here. So for those of you in the audience, it's Senator Kelly Seyarto. He's a Republican member of the California State Senate representing the 32nd District since 2022. You were also a past mayor. That's how I knew you, from Murrieta. And I believe you served in state assembly. Is that correct?
That's correct. 2 years.
Excellent. Now, the 32nd Senate District encompasses parts of Riverside, San Bernardino, Orange, northeastern San Diego counties, including communities like Murrieta, Temecula, Wildomar, Lake Elsinore, Menifee, Yorba Linda, and Chino Hills. Wow.
Yeah, it is a very large district.
Awesome. In the state Senate, Seyarto has prioritized issues such as public safety, wildfire prevention, and government transparency. And that will probably be a good segue. Just to add, since it may touch base, you have an Associate of Science from in Fire Science from Mount San Antonio College, and also a Bachelor of Science in Fire Protection Administration and Technology from California State University. So that
Right.
kind of lays the groundwork for how you have the authority to talk about these things they're facing issues in California. So thank you. Thank you. Let's dive in. I wanted to find out what's going on right now in legislation. And I know that there's been a lot on the table, and is it going as planned?
Well, you know what? We started out the year, and I think everybody in the legislature has realized, and it was announced by leadership up here, that we are very concerned about the affordability issues in California. Unfortunately, to this date, we have not really touched on anything that is going to lower our cost of living. At all things, everything is generated from energy policy.
Mm,
Energy policy in California is very much a product of some of our climate change agendas.
mhm.
And the problem is that a lot of that is now we're seeing that it's unattainable and frankly very unaffordable for people. And so we need to make some adjustments. And the only way we're going to address affordability is at the base of everything is to make the adjustments to policies that are driving the costs. And yet what we're really doing, we're trying to address affordability by trying to trying to limit costs by mandating that people they don't charge as much for groceries and things like that. When those are actually a function of the market.
Yes,
Yeah, rent controls and all these other type of price controls, those are all functions of the market.
correct.
Doesn't fix the underlying problem. And the
No.
underlying problem is when you have mandates that drive up the costs of commodities like electricity and gas and things like that, or you think you're going to be switching off of fossil fuels faster than you really can switch off fossil fuels, if you can ever do that, it's going to drive up costs. And we are feeling the effects of that. And we're kind of in probably the first 30% of feeling that.
Wow.
And so, I don't see rolling back mandates, like our vehicle mandates. Next year, They want our vehicles. New car dealerships are supposed to charge, they can only sell 35%. They have to sell 35% EVs. And they're only at 19% right now. They're not going to get to 35. And anything above that, if they sell a gasoline vehicle that's above 35 in that other range, there's like $20,000 fine. That is so unrealistic.
So as a consumer, I'm
Mhm.
frustrated. If I drive a gas vehicle in California, I pay approximately $2 a gallon more in taxation. Okay. And I've been told by the people that I know that are driving electric vehicles who thought they were getting around that. Now they're going to see a drive tax or a mile tax or something like that. So either way, our government regulation is impacting us. I get it. We got to pay for road and repair.
Right.
But those energy costs are definitely for an average household. If you're like me, I'm $140 a week in gas driving around to do my job.
Right. And even a loaf of bread, how do you think the loaf of bread gets to the
Yeah.
store?
Yeah.
It's delivered there on a truck, and that truck has to pay for fuel, and that fuel costs money, and it's costing more and more money. I was just in Iowa 2 or 3 weeks ago, and at the airport, I paid $2.50 a gallon, which is expensive that over there.
Exactly.
And I got home, and and in fact, their airport price, if you let them fill your car,
Right.
they said it was, it's $4.50 a gallon. I thought, wow, that's about a buck a gallon less than I have to pay at home. So
And it's outrageous. And that's
yeah,
translates.
that's really the flavor of this year was supposed to be working on affordability, and to me, it's not happening. And we got off to a really rough start with those fires.
Yeah, you're right.
So yeah,
That impacts everybody.
yeah,
So it is my understanding from feeling it that many of the people that can afford to rebuild out there on the coast will. It'll take time, but they will. But the people that serviced those homes, the maids, the restaurants, the servers, everybody in that area, they couldn't move to Orange County. They could definitely not stay in LA County. They have moved to Inland Valley, and that's driving up prices as well. We've seen an immense amount of subsidized housing come here. And I know that not everybody wants it. I know that it's probably needed, but new homes cost more than renovate or subsidized housing in old homes. And it seems like I mean, if I were starting out, do I really want to live in an apartment? No, I would like to get a nice, small little starter home on a small lot and start with that and start accumulating wealth versus go to spend $2,500 in an apartment. So
Right.
obviously we've got some stuff that's going on there that's not making a lot of people happy. And
right.
yet, I don't know. I know that we're shortage of development in here in California. I think 2.5 billion is a million
Million.
homes they want, million homes they want to build.
Mhm.
And we're behind on that. Um, so
So
what do you think for that?
yeah, so the problem I see with our housing policy, I'm the vice chair of housing. I've been on housing for about 3 or 4 years. So I've got to watch all of the incentivizing of entry level type homes or affordable homes. And you're seeing the result of some of those, take it out of the local agency's control. And if you meet certain criteria, you kind of get to build by right. And so you're seeing a lot of that type of development. But what they're not considering is that across the spectrum of housing, it's all affected by the same kind of regulatory environment that got us here in the first place.
Yes.
And the rest of it's still affected by that. And if all they're going to do is push the entry level homes, eventually people, even if they went in there as a, kind of a stopgap, well, we'll camp here for a little bit, they
Right.
have no place to live after that. And so guess what they're choosing to do? They're moving out of state.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
these are not just people that, can only afford an affordable apartment. They're people that can buy a house if the house isn't $1.5 million.
Oh, it's true.
Yeah. And so we're losing our kids. My kids just moved to,
Exactly. Which then we
yeah,
follow them because we want to be close to the grandkids, right?
that's right. There's pressure on that for us to do that.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of a drain that you're seeing. because underlying the housing issue is the regulatory issues. They're shooting at everything except for the regulatory environment that is causing this. And part of that is CEQA. You see a lot of CEQA exemptions
Yes.
for a lot of the affordable and entry level housing.
They bypass people, don't they?
Nothing for everything else, and certainly nothing for the job producing businesses that would come in to support that housing. So what you're seeing is a bunch of housing being built, entry level housing, a lot of apartments, high density, and they're affecting our schools. And so what the schools' reaction is, hey, we have to build more schools, which means we need to put, more on your taxes.
Right.
And so we need to borrow money and put it on your taxes. Another policy that is pushing our affordability out of reach again.
Yeah.
So it's just, we're fighting against ourselves. We're not bringing the jobs in to support those. So everybody's going to be a commuter,
Which is more energy costs.
which means we need better transportation systems, but we're not putting money into the transportation system, especially roads, because they don't want people driving on the roads.
That's
But
true.
we're creating commuters.
Wow.
So we're just caught in this big circle of damaging things that we're doing to California, in our region especially, because that's where the growth can occur,
Yes.
but we don't get the infrastructure improvements that we need to support that growth, and we're not getting the investment we need. And their answer to that when I say the
Taxation.
behind the masterminds behind all this,
Right.
is that we pay more.
Yes.
So how does that translate into a more affordable California experience
It does
for
not.
normal families?
I was listening to a podcast yesterday on housing, and it talked about the development growth that was market driven in Austin, Texas.
Mhm.
And what they did is they overbuilt. They took all regulation off, and the developers went crazy. And the prices of these houses, now they had too much now, and the prices of the houses came down because of the market. And here we have the regulation, and it's slow, and there's not enough, and the cost is high. The only thing that's been driving the new home in our industry is they've been supplementing the interest rate. So the builders will come in and buy down the interest rate, which drives that new home thing.
Wow.
So, but again, we're stagnant in so many other ways. And let's face it, if yours and my kids move out of the state,
Right.
our work, and we're at a retirement age soon enough, we're losing our workforce, which is forcing the very rich and the poverty level to stay here.
Mhm.
Right. And that's not sustainable or healthy for our state either.
Right. You're absolutely right. And a lot of the other issues with the housing is once you get into CEQA, now you have lawsuits that slow things down. Then you have your supply chain issues that are slowing things down.
Yes.
And it's not, something new with the recent administration's moves.
Right.
This has been going on for a while.
Yes.
And because everything, like I said, everything evolves from energy. Energy costs more supply chain issues. It's more costs for that. But then we have our legal environment here in California also. And we are creating many avenues for people to use and access the legal system for good development.
Wow.
And
I heard that.
Yeah, it's
I
so
heard they tie them up for years, and
Yep.
any regulation, any environmentalist will stop a project, slow it down for multiple years, and then the builder's sitting on the land for a while, and some money spent, and that
Yeah.
drives the cost of housing up.
Yeah, anybody who wants a piece of the pie,
Yes.
once they are offered that piece of pie, then all of a sudden they're happy with the project.
So interesting enough,
Yeah.
they talked about the conversion. This developer talked about a conversion of a motel space,
Mhm.
studio apartments. Things seems like a really great entry point for people, right?
Right.
He said the cost, because of all the regulation, was $600,000 per unit.
Yeah.
Outrageous. That's not saving the taxpayers any money, right?
No, and if you're going to not have to charge that market rate for those places, then we're subsidizing.
Yes, we are, because it's a loss.
And once we've subsidized, if somebody moves in, then that price goes right back up. So you might as well it's like you're just giving them $300,000 because now they own something that's now worth twice as much already. So it's just, it's a weird, I don't think it's a very effective way to approach housing. The other issue I wanted to mention real quick is we have all these new affordable places coming online. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is we have no tracking. Like if you go to a school and they can identify 5 families that are struggling and need an affordable home to improve their living situation. Well, if at the end of the process we make 500 affordable homes and we still have 3 families that are not in an affordable house in our area, well, what happened? How did those families not get into one of our affordable units? We don't have tracking. There's no way for us to make sure that we are actually handling the problem in our area first before those homes are opened up for other people to come from everywhere else.
I see.
So we don't know if we're actually alleviating our own problem.
Wow. So we
Other
might be
folks-
drawing people from other areas in, is what you're
Yeah.
saying?
You
I know
could
that
be.
once upon a time I held a rental that was Section 8.
Mm.
And I was told that there was a very long list of people that were waiting to get housing, and it was probably 2 years. Do we, any of these subsidized housing, do they go through Section 8, or are they just, do you meet the minimum guideline of income in a household, or what?
They're supposed to have guidelines set up about income levels and things like that. But there are no guidelines that say we have 50 people in our community that need help. Well, if at the end of the day we've rented out all of the apartments and we still have 30 of those same people that need
Right.
help, I'm thinking, well, we didn't even take care of our people.
No, all we did is build.
And that's
one
what this is
apartment.
supposed to be for.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm trying to look for some accountability and to ensure that, hey, when we're doing this, are we actually helping the folks that the neighbors that lost their house, or the people living in a car that, the mom and a couple of kids because they're having issues at home? Are we helping them, or are they getting left behind and we're helping everybody else?
Wow.
So that's something that I want to have a better grasp on as far as our housing policies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you think the fires in LA have affected housing from your standpoint, from a legislation standpoint? Because I know that's got to be messy over there.
Yeah. One of the first issues is that people have a tendency to want to solve everything 2 weeks after the fire happens, and we get a plethora of bills
Yeah.
to solve those problems.
Yes.
These are not problems that you solve in 2 weeks.
No.
And so we spend the rest of the session going through committees and hearings on bills that I think a lot of times are not effective.
Yeah.
And they're kind of knee-jerk bills that a lot of times people just want to get out there. We also have bills that are generated from special interests, whether it's conservation, the environmental community, the building community, whoever it is. They have their version of what the best way to recover is.
Yeah.
And their version is usually something that has to do with them having it their way. And it doesn't really necessarily reflect the needs of the people that were affected by the fire. Like, let's get their land cleared, their soil safe, and their permits done so they can get to the task of rebuilding if they can. And if they don't want to or they can't, which is the case in a lot of these places, is they can sell their land and move on. But there's also a lot of opportunists that want to change how things are done.
Yeah.
And I don't want that change to make somebody that used to live in a house not be able to do that. And so that's what I'm kind of looking at as we get some of the bills that are coming through. And that's the same with the wildfire mitigation issues. We have a lot of those bills that, nobody called me, and I'm probably the guy in the Senate that knows the most about wildfires.
Exactly.
And so I'm looking at all these wildfire bills, and I told both sides, I said, you guys, if you're going to bring fire bills to public safety, and I'm there, which I will be, you know what? If your bill's not effective, I don't care what it has next to it. I'm going to tell you it's not effective.
Exactly.
And we need to look at it from a much broader perspective on how to deal with prevention, how to deal with our response issues, and
Yes.
how to deal with our recovery issues going into the future. That's not a 2-week process.
No.
And there's a lot, but there's little pieces that people are doing here and there that sometimes they work against each other.
Yes.
That's something we don't need to be doing. And because we'll be redoing it later. So there's a lot of that type of legislation going on. And my role is, hey, use what expertise I have to try at least ferret out the ones that are really bad or are not helpful at all, or have other special interests other than the people that lived there in mind. I
Yeah.
want people who live there to be able to go back to living where they were and recover as quickly as possible, which is not going to be a few month process.
Right.
It'll be a while.
I'm finding something locally, and that maybe you've heard or see it in other areas because you've got such wide expanse, is that our high fire zones have expanded. And it's happened overnight since the LA fires. And even some of the housing I deal with, I have a Lake Elsinore home that's up in the hills. And the owner who's selling it, he's been renting that property for years. And insurance was not a problem for him. But now, as we sell it to an individual that's entry level houses, they cannot. It's cost prohibitive, throws them out of their affordability zone if
Yes.
they can get insurance. If
Yes.
and that's happening across the board. La Cresta homes, $20,000 to $30,000 now to insure. Bear Creek homes, $8,000 to $12,000, and all of a sudden, that's pretty high ticket, and it's preventing a lot of sales from happening.
Right. So again, affordability. This does not lend to affordability in California.
No.
And the solutions that I have heard for insurance so far
Yeah.
fall very, very short of what is needed. This is something that my crew and I are going, now that we have gotten through the Senate committee season, our own bills,
Right.
we're going to start working on some ideas that we have for the insurance part of this. When we have to do something drastically different,
Yes, we do.
and that, makes people a little,
Nervous.
scared on
Yeah.
this side.
Yeah.
People don't want to make the industries mad or any, but you know what? We have to fix this problem
Absolutely.
because it goes hand in hand with the wildfire issues in California. And we have to do better at the mitigation part because that's part of bringing that risk down.
Sure.
And we have to buy down that risk somehow.
Yeah.
So we're going to be working on those things, and we'll be having some meetings in the next couple of weeks, I hope. We're trying to meet with the insurance commissioner's staff, but they have not been responsive to us. But we'll continue to work with the people we can. And then when we're ready to roll out a different idea for this insurance nonsense,
Yeah.
what I call it, then we'll see what the public thinks about it first.
Yeah.
And then if we get good feedback from people, then we'll put it in bill form and see if we can make it go.
So I've heard a couple of rumors. Maybe you could dispel it. So it talked about California Fair Plan obviously was not designed to cover what they're covering right now. And obviously they burdened a lot of that problem that happened in LA. And that's being passed down to most of us. And it's just every other house that I go to is California Fair Plan now. Rumor yesterday came over my desk that when landlords were going for renewal, California Fair Plan said, you're in a corporation, LLC, potentially some trust. Sorry, we will not renew your policy anymore. You're on your own to find something else. And they are suggesting, he mentioned a commercial policy that might be along the lines of California Fair Plan, which of course opens the door for exorbitant amount of cost, not to mention if there's small margins on these rentals, which a lot of people might have a very small rental margin, that means a lot more properties coming back to market when affordability is gone. Well, why would you hold on to a property if it's not going to appreciate speedily? It costs too much to hold on and rents can't rise. So it's going to cause a different sort of problem here. And it stems from part of that is insurance costs.
Yeah. So we have the FAIR Plan. We have our other disaster recovery funds. We have the wildfire fund from the utility companies. We have all these different things.
Wow.
And the FAIR Plan basically got collapsed with this fire. I don't know what their status is right now, but it can't be good.
For a lot of money they were requesting from another source.
So that's why I'm looking at a different approach. And we'll see if, like I said, we're going to go and have some discussions with the various stakeholders. And if at the end of it, we feel like this is something that's real viable for California, then we're going to push it. And hopefully people will like what they hear.
Do you see from the state and Senate consensus coming together, or are we still very divided in how we approach this affordability issue?
We're divided. And the division is more of a political divide. And that's a problem, is a lot of our issues they're not political problems,
Correct.
pragmatic
Human.
problems,
Yeah, it's human.
structural problems.
Yes.
If everybody wants to solve a problem politically, it's not going to solve.
Yeah.
So we really need to work on, when you look at, you go down the list of things we need to work on, and you're looking at infrastructure that includes our road systems, transportation, rail systems, all of that, flood control, our water system needs to be updated. All these things need a lot of attention,
Yes.
and yet they're kind of like pushed aside while we deal with other stuff that, really is more politically
Louder.
driven.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it kind of sucks all the oxygen out of the room, and that's all we wind up accomplishing. And when you're divided politically, especially when you're in a super majority type of situation, well, you know where that lands. That lands on the side of the super majority.
Of course.
But we're fighting like heck to get us focused on the pragmatic part, which requires everybody in the room to work together to solve problems that people absolutely should be falling on the same page,
Yes.
because there are solutions, and we need to make sure that we explore those and we enact those.
Is there something that the general public can do um, to support you in your efforts? I mean, obviously, if we side with you in these issues, can we write letters? Can we reach out to people? How do we support you?
Well, people live in different districts. They have senators up in northern Riverside. They have them out in the desert. Wherever they live, they can reach out to their senator to let them know, hey, these are the things that really concern us. We would like us to be focused on this as a state. And so allowing their representatives the opportunity to know, because what happens is nobody hears anything from the public unless they have a group mad at them about one thing, and then they come up and they're mad about that one thing. But in general, people aren't paying attention.
Yeah, we're too busy. We're running around being busy and trying to keep up. And
Right. They're just trying to live their lives.
Yeah.
And right now, we want you to just live your life. But at the same time, if you don't if you don't tell us what it makes to make your life better and put pressure on your electeds to forward those ideas, they're not going to achieve that. They're going to be blindsided by super high costs. They're going to be blindsided by a $600 gas bill in the middle of February and things like that. Our gasoline with Valero closing and Phillips 66 closing.
Wow. That's
could be looking at $6-7 a gallon for gas.
No kidding. Really, it's going to
We won't be that short. We are now going to go under what we require, even with all of the transfer to EV and transfers. What we're trying to do, we are going to be under the amount that we consume every day.
Wow. And then
and so we have to make that up somewhere, and that it's coming over on ships, and we're paying more for that. And those are coming from countries that don't have half, even a third. Even a smidge of what we do as far as environmentally friendly processes for creating fuel. And so we're actually supporting worse environmental programs elsewhere
because
it's just ridiculous. We have the ability to pull the energy out that we need and we use, but we're basically outlawing it here. It's not conducive to what we talked about when we started, which was affordability.
Wow, you're absolutely right. Well, it makes more sense to push things like a hybrid more so than an EV. I've heard folks from the infrastructure in energy talk about the impact on our infrastructure from all of these solars and the draw of energy, and how it's been more damaging than anything else, and that there's no money pouring into those infrastructures. And that's something to consider too. And all this home building too, drawing more energy. I don't know if we thought through that. When we put together a plan, we probably put it together 8 or 10 years ago, and we don't project the full number of people that have moved in. I saw the numbers for Menifee. They're going to
Right.
pass Murrieta and Temecula in like next year
Yeah.
in population if they haven't
I think
already.
they already have. They think they've already passed us.
Uh,
But yeah, that's, and that's what we're kind of talking about here is I have nothing again. I mean, if people want an EV and that works for them, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
To try to make everybody buy one
Yeah.
when it doesn't work for them, that's not. And not having the infrastructure to support that level of market,
Yeah.
well, that's dumb. We're going to wind up, we're
Hurting
going to wind
ourselves.
up with not being able to get to work
Yeah.
and things like that. So, we need to go at a pace that technology and the market supports. We're trying to make it go light years faster, and we're failing, and we know we're failing, and yet we don't want to back off and re-examine our approach and then continue forward, but maybe not as drastically, because that drastically is actually what causes the financial pain that all of us are feeling now.
Yeah. It's interesting without diving in too politically. What I saw in this current administration was someone taking a separate approach to analyze what's smart, what's inefficient, and then get rid of it and start again, forcing us to rethink how we do it. And corporations do that all the time. And I know that once you're in a mode, and I do this in my own business, I'm in running mode and I do things the same way until something or someone
Yeah.
stops me in my tracks to stop, reorg, right?
Yeah.
Let's rethink this in a smarter fashion. And that's hard to do for government.
Right. But that's exactly what we need to do, especially with relation to the base of all things expensive, our
Yeah.
energy policy and our climate change agenda policies,
Yes.
because that's what's driving right now. That's what's driving everything. I think people across the board will, even if they won't admit it out in front on a committee, but they'll admit it behind the scenes that, boy, it's not working very well. And we
So
need to fix it.
you're right. I had a stranger approach me and they mentioned that they were an active Democrat, but they said if only the Republicans started talking a little bit more about protecting the environment, I would probably switch over. And that hit me with a little bit of sense between the eyes. And I thought maybe we could have a little bit more chatter about it for those people that are in the middle, or
Right.
and maybe we can get something done in the state.
Well, it's funny because people will talk about that. And as we promote the bills or we try to promote ideas about fire prevention, well, one really good fire
Yeah.
eliminates all of the environmental protections that we've
It
done for
does.
years. But, they don't that doesn't translate to them into being protectors of the environment when we're saying, hey, we need to go out and make sure that we have good buffer zones between heavy brush and
Right.
lighter brush and then in our neighborhoods.
Right.
And so they don't allow for those policies to happen. It doesn't. And then we have this wild, horrible conflagration like we just had in Altadena and Palisades. And people wonder, well, what happened? Well, what happened is our vegetation management wasn't very good.
Yeah, I heard that too.
And when we didn't plan for things that we know may happen.
Yes.
And when that happens, everybody stands back to wring their hands about it. The legislature wants to react by doing something. And I've told them our doing something for the Palisades and Altadena was
Right.
5 years ago.
Yes.
And we
Exactly.
didn't do it. So now we have to do something for the future now. So
Absolutely.
let's not lose that momentum and let's get to getting things done now. And so maybe our environmental approach to helping the environment doesn't look exactly like their environmental approach, maybe on the other side of the aisle, but there isn't anybody I've ever talked to that says, hey, we want to trample over the environment and we don't care what happens with our air quality.
There you go.
Everybody
Right.
cares. They just have different approaches to doing it.
Exactly.
And in our case, it's making sure that we have the energy we need because we need their energy reliability. If it's too hot, people need their air conditioners. And that means lots of electricity.
Yes.
If it's too cold, they need efficiency in their furnaces. And
Yes.
if electricity is off, that means furnaces need to be on. If they run by gas, or you have a gas fireplace or something like that, you can still create heat.
Yes.
We need resilience, and we're taking our resilience away. To us, that's not an environmentally friendly thing. That's an environmental disaster waiting to happen. So we need to be able to mitigate as much as we can, but understand that we are human beings, and there's 300 billion of us.
Right.
Yeah, 300, is it 3? Yeah, 3 billion. I forgot what the number is nowadays
Crazy.
in the world. And we are environmental damage.
Yes, we are
ourselves,
inherently.
but we're not going to eliminate ourselves. And so we just have to mitigate as much as we can, and at the same time, let it make sense. So I am going to have to jump off here real soon. So
Well,
what else you wanted to cover?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate this, and I appreciate your time, and we'll make sure we get this to you. If anybody needs to reach out, is there a website they can go to find out more information?
Well, you know what? They could just if they just Google the name, the Senate office, they'll get all of the office information and the website. If you go to the California State Senate website, and you go to me specifically, it'll have our website on there, any number that they would need, and they can contact us that way.
Excellent. Kelly, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it, as always. Thanks for fighting for us.
All right. Thank you, Liz, for having me today. I appreciate it.
You bet. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thank you for listening to Local Living Tri-City. Stay tuned for more insights and stories from Temecula, Murrieta, Menifee, and surrounding areas. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend that is passionate about the Tri-City area as you are. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you next episode.